First, let me just tell you, thanks for having us here. This is a really a great honor to be sitting across from you and enjoying this. Thanks to Jeff as well. I got to tell you, when the video first popped on the internet about this wave, I mean, the speculation was just, where is this wave? It was, I mean, they had it in Australia, they had it all over. But something told me with the trees around here that it was Central California. It reminded me of where you would have farmland. But to get to this point took a lot of time. Why don't you kind of start in the beginning where you thought you and some people that you would bring together could make something this perfect?
The original idea was to create a circular wave, basically the shape of a donut, a pool kind of the shape of a donut with an island in the middle, and have the wave break permanently around the whole island nonstop, and there'd be maybe 2 or 3 waves going at all times. There were some limitations and some inherent issues with the way the water flowed and stuff like that. So we sort of changed course. I started working on that in about 2005, and I met Jeff in 2007, I think, and we started working together and just started basically studying technology. One of the partners was Bob McKnight, my boss and the president and CEO of Quicksilver. He was a USC alumni, and he said, why don't you go to the school and I'll introduce you to some of the professors. You can talk about wave energy. And so we did that, and that was kind of where we got our start, and ultimately hired one of the professors away to work for us full time, a guy named Adam Fincham. And Adam came up with a lot of the science behind the idea of how to create a swell. So I was basically going to them saying, here's what I want, and how do we make this happen? And the idea for that was, how do we create something that can generate a perfect swell with good energy that stays together as a unit? It doesn't spread out or lose its energy quickly. The scientific term for that is a soliton, or a solitary wave. In surfing, we talk about wind swells and ground swells. That's kind of how we name them. A wind swell is something generated locally by wind, and it's kind of bumpy and choppy. A ground swell would be something that has groomed itself over thousands of miles to kind of come in uniform patterns and shapes, and a nice long line to the wave. So that's that energy uniformly working together. So Adam figured out how to make the make the solitary wave, the soliton, and that was really the basis of our patent at the time. And then one thing led to another, and Jeff and I found this property that we're sitting on now after almost purchasing another property in Bakersfield, which was a fish pond. And so when we came and made this, the working title was Fish Pond. It was kind of a joke. We were sort of hiding it from people. We even had logos that said Fish Pond and shirts and stuff, And the people working on it, most of the people here didn't surf that were working on it, but a couple guys kind of had an idea of like, this looks like a little something, looks a little fishy.
A fish pond looking fishy.
Yeah. They were skeptical on us, but that was kind of part of the fun in it. And so we started on this property in probably 13 or 14, and then we were finished the end of 15. And that's when we rode waves on the first day. That's that first day that we surfed. Todd Glazer from San Diego. He and I just did this book, by the way, self-promotion there.
Go right ahead.
But yeah, Todd and I have been working together for a long time, and we put a book together of all our photos and stuff. But one of the big stories that we have is that Todd was here for the whole making of this property and this wave, and there on day one and filmed it all. So we're going on 9 years now.
So you were probably testing this in a smaller scale, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you first saw it in the smaller scale, it's one thing to do it in a small scale, but then to expand it out and make it full scale, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, there's a certain threshold of size of wave you have to make that will scale up properly, and that's about 8 inches or so. And so from there, the physics of the wave work when you scale it up. But if you're making like a 1 to 2 inch, 3 inch wave, it doesn't really scale up the same. So there's a kind of a threshold there that our scientists discovered and understood. And yeah, obviously we've made a linear pool as opposed to a circular pool. That was a real difference.
At what point, I mean, getting to where you say, okay, flip the switch, let's go, did you have a feeling day one, moment one, when the switch went on that it was going to work? Or was it kind of like, okay, let's find out if this baby works?
Obviously, when you spent the amount of money and time and man hours that we did, there's a little bit of skepticism around that, and you want to be sort of, you want to have just the right amount of, I don't want to say doubt, but expectation that if it doesn't work, you're ready for that, you process it correctly. But we were very confident it was going to work, right? I didn't have any doubts.
So the wave obviously is machine-like. Obviously it's a machine, so it's machine-like, but it's I call it the eighth wonder of the surf world. You're the best surfer ever in the surfing world, but you surf with some of the best. What is some of the reaction you've got from the crew on the tour and or people that aren't on the tour?
It's a funny combination of reactions. Look, at the end of the day, we've had hundreds of people and more come here and say it was the best day of their lives surfing with their kids, their family. It's so fun. Like, it's one of the greatest places to ever go and just surf with your friends. As far as competitively, a lot of the surfers didn't like it, and a lot of the fans didn't like it. But as far as just a destination to go surf, everyone loves it. Like, across the board, every single person who's been here has loved it. So it serves a purpose, you know. And I think competitively, the idea of having it in a pool where you're recreating the wave over and over and over again in the same specifications, to me it's interesting because it's creating a fair playing field and you're just looking at skills. But in the ocean, there's a different skill. And when you're dealing with nature, there's the unknown, and that's kind of exciting for competition. So I think that's maybe part of why, and also there's a certain type of surfing or surfer or size surfer or whatever that it probably fits better. But I really think that a perfect wave like this kind of shows where you need to improve and the things you need to work on. You know, when something's so perfect, the only thing gonna mess it up is you, not the wave, you know? So, yeah.
Bonk.
Yeah, so, it's really great for training, and it's super fun to have friends, and you know, a lot of my favorite days are just in inviting friends up here that have never surfed it and get to see them surf it the first time, or people who've maybe been here and just had a little taste of it and they just can't wait to get back. So it's super fun. I actually probably enjoy more just hearing other people, watching other people surf it and hearing their stories about it than surfing it myself.
You're kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You've created this magical thing, and now it's just fun to listen to how everyone's excited about it as you are.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, Jeff and I get a lot of pride out of how much people enjoy this place.
Now, to pull this off, you said you employed mostly people in the area, the Lemoore area, but also there's a certain contingency coming out of Southern California. Tell me about that perspective in pulling those talented people into the area here and working in the pool.
Yeah, well, a lot of people that work here and have worked on the project are from San Diego, the greater San Diego area. And when you're dealing with surfing, you're going to want to have people from the coast. And it's natural to hire people you already know and you understand their experience and stuff. So a lot of the surf teachers here, lifeguards, et cetera, are from San Diego. I'd say the majority of them are kind of from the San Diego area. And a lot of photographers that come up here are actually from the San Diego area as well, that are known to be hired for the day. Yeah, it's not really by chance. Jeff's from there. I live in San Clemente part-time, and our facility, actually our offices, have been down in San Diego for a long time. So there's a lot of DNA coming out of that area.
So now this is not a one-off. This wave is not the only one like it in the world. You have other waves around the world that are the Kelly Surf Ranch waves. Tell us where they are and where they're going to be.
Yeah, so the technology is called KS Wave Co. And we built another one in Abu Dhabi, which just recently opened officially, but it's been ready for about a year. We surfed it last November for the first time, but it was sort of ready for a couple of months before then. We're building another one in Austin, Texas right now, which is going to be part of a private membership club. And we're going to build a second wave there as well with a different technology. You know, the technology just a means to an end. We just are trying to design really good waves, and that's one way to do it. But they sort of serve different purposes. Ours is a really long, perfect wave. You don't get a high volume of lots of waves. You get long rides, really long rides each time you surf. And then a lot of the other waves are short waves, maybe 10 seconds long or 15 seconds long, but there's a high volume of them. They just don't have quite as much energy in the wave. So just kind of different purposes.
You mentioned the waves. If you could tell me the different waves that you can create here and or with the other technology and why it's across the spectrum, anyone can be here.
Yeah, depending on the technology, you can create anything you can imagine, really. Our technology is, I would say, somewhat limited in that way. Ours is about imparting a lot of energy from the machine into the wave, so you make a perfect swell, and you run it at a certain angle and speed. And by doing that, you vary the way the wave breaks to some degree. So we can run a little wave that's only sort of knee to waist high, or we can run a big wave that's sort of 7.5 feet on the face. Anywhere in between there, and the speed varies, and based on the depth of water and how fast you run it, the wave can be different heights. For creating different sections on waves and stuff, like in the ocean, you get a lot of when you have reefs and different sand bottom shapes and point breaks and blah blah blah. Those things all the swells interact with those bottoms in different ways. So let's say you have a reef a quarter mile off the beach that's somewhat shallow. Maybe it just barely breaks the waves, or it bends the swells. By the time those swells get in by the beach, they're coming from different angles, and they intersect at different angles, and you get more or less what we call wedges. You know, sort of a steep, sharp peak in one area, and they peel off in different directions, or are better primarily right or left. Our wave is meant to be more of a perfect point break wave. Some of the other waves can be sort of shorter one maneuver, two maneuver waves in various different pools. So it's really up to the imagination and how good you are at designing when you're working with the software at this point.
And this wave is what most surfers' imagination dreamt of when they were scribbling it out. Was that maybe part of that for you? Were you one of those kids that drew those perfect waves on your folders at school or something like that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was from Florida. I was born and raised surfing in Florida, and the waves are tiny and rarely very good. So I was using my imagination a lot as a kid to try to think up and draw great waves. You know, of course, you're writing your school books and get in trouble by the teacher, but that was kind of part of the deal. I didn't grow up with the idea that one day I'll make waves, but I used to go to Wet n Wild in Orlando when I was a kid, and we used to body surf in this little wave tank, this little wave pool, and the wave was maybe this big, and we'd get a bodyboard and try to find the most energy like against the wall with a little wedge in it or something, and imagine we were surfing as we're bodyboarding and body surfing. But I think that, along with wake surfing a lot as a kid behind the boat, like scurfing with the rope and stuff. In the summer, the waves are small, so we're doing a lot of that back home. I think all those ideas were feeding my mind in the potential of one day creating artificial waves, man-made waves. I didn't know it at the time. Like I said, I only started working on this in about 2005. So I spent, 33 years of my life not really thinking much about it in terms of creating these waves. But then when I realized that we could make these waves, and I showed some of the pros on tour, I remember distinctly showing a few of the pros when we were in Tavaro one year, and I was showing them some of the videos of these little small waves we're creating in a wave pool test facility, and they were like, wow, that's going to be insane. If you could make that in real life, that's going to be crazy. So that was really the confirmation I needed to go down that lane and start working on this full time. And then I started imagining, if we make this, what it could be one day, and it's getting to that point now.
I heard it said that you wanted this to be perfect. You said, I don't care if it takes 6 months, 6 years, I don't care. We got to make this perfect if we're going to bring it to the public. Was that part of that thing that you, being a surfer, you didn't want to for the lack of a better way of saying, half-ass it?
We had a couple of partners early on that wanted us to put out a product before we were ready to, and we were pretty clear that we weren't to that point, that we were ready to show what we had. So we didn't want to do it too early and then ruin the chance of a future. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were very confident that the wave would be, I mean, perfect is whatever you define as perfect, but you know, as good a quality wave as we could construct before actually going and building it. And it sounds weird to even say that, to construct a wave or build a wave, but you know, you're making a few things interact with each other. You have a foil that creates the swell. You have a certain depth of water. You have an angle that and speed that it runs at, and then you have a bottom shape. That's kind of big part of our thing is creating the bottom shape. How steeply the wave comes up out of deep water, at what depth of water it breaks in, all those sort of things. And those create the basic design for the wave. But if we got any of that wrong, each to itself isn't that difficult. But if we got any of those wrong, then we're potentially shooting ourselves in the foot for the future.
So part of what Kelly Slater does is, I see you constantly giving back to the surf world, to the general public. What else is Kelly Slater up to these days? Besides everything.
Whatever. No, I mean,
we recently got together in San Diego. What were you up to in San Diego?
Look, if you get fame and do nothing with it, nothing good with it, then you've kind of wasted it. But as I'm not patting myself on the back too much, but I try to bring attention and awareness to a lot of different topics that are dear to me. Could be anything. Could be just a nice story somebody went through that I don't even know. But as far as projects we actually work on, we just did a charity fundraiser golf tournament that we've done a few years in a row now for a group called Brother Benno's out of San Diego, Oceanside area, and it's to relieve homelessness, help the homeless get fed, get help, get off the streets. Get themselves sober if there's any problems there. So we've actually raised a few $100,000 each of the last couple of years to donate towards that, and we have some good friends that are working with them, and they have a few fun outings during the year too, where they go fishing and do various things. But a lot of those people have come out of this program and are now donating their time back to people, even though they've gotten themselves on their feet. And so it's a good grassroots community project, and I've only been working with it for a couple of years myself, but it's a great project, and I'm super proud to be part of that.